Back with closing trades right here, Nifty now just mapping the last half an hour of trade and a sudden cool off actually in the market. So it's not quite, that 0.5% to 0.7% gain that we were earlier sitting on. We've cracked from there and again beginning to perk up just that wee bit. 21,400 plus now in the Nifty futures. Wipro, by the way, is up 7.5% now in trade. Must bring up the intraday graph because this stock has been spiking and the spike has really come in the last hour and a half or 2 hours or so. 463 now on the stock. HCL Technologies in tandem with it, 3% higher, and it's a similar price pattern. It's not like to start off day these stocks were actually holding out. The best of the move has only come in the last lap or so 3% higher there. TechM as well, 2.5% higher too. That said, there's Maruti, Tata Motors as well looking very, very strong. Britannia has had actually a decent day in this current market volatility, or pause if you can call it that. So these stocks as well are looking good. By the way, LTIM Infy as well are now catching up, and a completely similar price action, big spike up coming in on both LTI Mindtree as well as Infosys, where the chart will just come off you on your screens. Now again at the session highs, 1560 on Infy as we speak right now. TCS2 holding up 1% while we're at it. So it seems like an across the sector move, led of course by Wipro. Ashi Anand too joins in on the show right now. Ashi, hi, afternoon. Lot of interest in the IPO market, and considering you track this space closely, any business that you've liked, any IPO that you've subscribed to?
Thanks for having me on the show. So yeah, we are tracking the IPO space. There are some definitely certain interesting kind of IPOs coming up in terms of certain D2. So there are certain D2C brands which are coming up. There are certain other digital platforms. So it is a space that we are tracking. The only problem is, I think, the IPO market is probably a bit too hot. You're seeing participation probably being too high. There's a large amount of IPOs which probably aren't of that high quality, seeing very large subscription numbers. So it's not really the healthiest space, and it's you may even like an IPO, but it's very difficult to get subscription. So it is a space that we are tracking, but honestly, at some level, we're a bit more concerned about some level of froth that you're probably seeing here, as compared to seeing it as being very interesting, really.
Naresh with us as well. Naresh, metals as a pack has also been doing quite well. Call it the dollar weakness, which is below the mark of 102, but something definitely is working out well for the entire basket. Apart from Hindustan Copper that you've been quite positive on, any other name that merits a look?
So in this pack, Jindal Steel has been a leader. So that has corrected from 750.55 to 720 levels. So that's a stock which can again go back to new high. So in metals, that is one. Second is to look out for a dip on NMDC whenever it dips. That's a strong trend. So that's the second one. So mining looks interesting. And then we are seeing in the small cap and the mid cap metal names. So we've seen a good breakout in Sham Metallics. Right now, we are seeing a good breakout happen in Mukund Limited, which is hitting multi-year highs. So the focus seems to be shifting from the core steels to specialty steel, wherein we are seeing good chart formations in something like a Mukund and a Vardhaman specialty steel, etc. So overall, the sector is seeing a shift in terms of leadership. So I would like Jindal Steel and in mining NMDC on dips.
Actually, the same question on metals to you really. Does it seem like this is a sustainable move? Because it's pretty closely linked right now with the way the yield has been panning out in the US.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Yeah, I just wanted to understand your thoughts, Ashi, on metals, whether that's a sector that you're looking at right now, what's happening in the market is a sudden move up, closely interlinked with the way the dollar has been panning out. If that correlation were to be true, does it seem like this is just a short-term move that you're seeing in metals?
I would think so, right? So if you're just looking at the move, it's clearly a tactical trading kind of a call. You're seeing US interest rates having peaked. You're seeing the 10-year GSEC having fallen from 5 to about 3.9%. And I think it's within that context that you're seeing a certain amount of strength in metals. You're seeing a larger risk on trade, FI flows starting to come back in. So I think that's really the context of the current strength in metals. But if you just look at it from a slightly longer term perspective, the Chinese economy is really struggling. And importantly, it's the housing sector in China which is really struggling the most. I think just 2 days back, there was one other Chinese developer which went in for bankruptcy. Now, China has been the core driver of global demand for metals. And if the biggest demand driver is really going to be weak, it's really difficult to build any kind of longer term fundamental call on at least the core metals. Now, there are certain rare earth metals that go into EV batteries, etc. That is a different space. But in terms of your normal aluminum, steel, etc., we are seeing this as a trading play, but not very attractive from a longer term perspective.
Okay, so not very attractive from a long term. There could be these sporadic moves that come in some of the metal names. We were talking about IT stocks and the large cap IT, but don't lose sight of the mid cap IT because Persistent is sitting at fresh record high. It's up 90% this year. You also have Cyient, which is sitting at fresh life highs. Birlasoft is also in that list, wherein that stock too is sitting at 740 levels, which is the highest that we have seen in its lifetime. So record high for that. And Zensa Tech too is higher at around 620 thereabouts. But Pharma, that's the space which is gaining ground. So Concord Bio 10% higher, JB Chemicals that's higher by around 8%. And then of course you also have names like AstraZeneca. Nuresh, your view on the charts of some of these names?
So AstraZeneca looks interesting in the whole pack because that's a stock which has come back to the highs made in 2021. A lot of names have not been able to do so. And there were two tops around that 5,000 mark. We made a 5,000 top also a few days back. So once it sustains 5,000, that is a clean breakout where it could slowly and steadily head up. So any dips remain a buy on AstraZeneca.
Shrikant, wanted to get your sense on this, big move that you're currently seeing in IT. And, one would think that it would pause anytime soon, but now Wipro is scaling higher by almost 7%, 7.5% actually on the futures.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it is very interesting formation that Wipro is forming on weekly and long-term charts. It was below these levels for almost 1.5 years. And after crossing this level, now we are seeing substantial upward activity in the stock. Also, if we go through with the relative performance of IT companies, then in that Wipro is doing really well and it is now gaining much better, or maybe it is outperforming better than the other peer of in this particular. So based on the formation, I think it is heading for the levels of at least 500 in next few weeks. But at current levels, we like Tech Mahindra, which is around 1280, 1275. There we feel that it is heading for the levels of at least 1350, 1370. The stock has changed its entire trading range. So based on the formation, it's a buy at current levels with a stop loss close to 1250.
Point taken. So that's the latest coming in on the IT stocks and what the charts are suggesting for that one. But Polycab is the stock which is down about 5%, and Varun Beverages too is cooling off 4% higher. Of course, Ashi, we had seen Polycab had been a massive wealth generator. I mean, if you look at the 2-3 years chart, this stock has completely changed its orbit. And Varun Beverages too has been a consistent performer. In fact, we were just looking at some of the data points, and this is one of those only stocks which has actually given a positive return each of the last 10 years, if I have it right. What's your view on counters like this? Should people be looking at adding positions into them?
So I think what you're seeing within consumer, right, is actually quite interesting. A large part of the space has actually been struggling for growth, right? But if you see the certain segments, firstly, which are doing relatively better. So I think anything linked to building materials, and that's really where Polycab fits right in. So anything linked to building materials has actually been doing very well. So especially anything going into real estate, also anything related to piping, right? Because there is a lot happening in terms of pipe demand, both from the government and from the housing sector. So I think those pockets are kind of doing well. Now, within kind of that, you also have certain companies which have actually just been executing that much better. So I think Polycab is a very good example. Varun Beverages is another decent example of consumer companies that have actually been outperforming. So I think in a larger sector, which has overall been struggling a bit over the last couple of years, clearly pockets which are interesting.
You always buy good businesses at a good price as well, right, Ashi? Are the valuations that some of these names are at, do they look comfortable for anyone to add positions? And I'm not talking about those who've been holding and, riding the move on these counters or even buy afresh.
Honestly, not really. Valuations, it just becomes, especially in certain of the hot consumer names, it becomes very, very difficult to justify valuations. If you try to build a DCF, you have to honestly have projections that start bordering on ridiculous in order to justify where some of these companies are trading. I think you're seeing this in certain pockets of consumer, you're seeing this in certain pockets of in capital goods, defense. Small cap is another space. A lot of small caps, you're also seeing similar kind of issues. So I think in a market where the overall underlying momentum is quite strong, I think sentiment is positive, the longer term outlook is looking good. It's important not to get carried away. There is a right price at which you need to buy a company, and if you ignore that, your investment story may not be very pretty.
Taken. I also wanted to talk about the auto sector because 2023 marked that entire transition from smaller passenger vehicles to SUV, because that was the biggest trend that we have seen over the last couple of years, and premiumization, and also the fact that this year there were a lot of big launches in the two-wheeler category, those big bike launches that happen and the partnerships that happen. But first, let me go across to my colleague Sumit to get a sense as to what are the launches that we're expecting in 2024 and how is it likely to pan out. Sumit?
After remaining silent on new launches in last month of December, Indian car and two-wheeler market will see a slew of new launches beginning from the first month of the new year. Hyundai will launch a refreshed Creta SUV on January 16, spearheading its launch of new SUVs in 2024. However, the rest of the year will be dominated by electric vehicles. Maruti Suzuki will make its entry into the EV space with the launch of SUV EVX, while Tata will launch its EVs Curve and Sierra. Mahindra will launch its XUV.E8, which will be an electric version of the XUV 700, while Toyota will launch its urban SUV concept, and Kia will launch EV9 based on its eGMP platform, while Skoda will also launch its Enyaq 4 electric car. But apart from electric vehicles, the other major new models that will dominate the market will be Maruti Suzuki's new Swift, Mahindra's 5-door Thar lifestyle SUV, Mahindra XUV 300 facelift, Hyundai Alcazar facelift, Maruti Suzuki Wagon R Flex Fuel, Nissan Qashqai and Juke, and Renault Duster that will be launched in 2024. Mahindra Bolero Neo Plus and Toyota Rush will be two other new SUVs that are slated to be launched in 2024. Luxury car market will also see a number of launches beginning from new BMW 5 Series, Volvo EX90, Mercedes-Benz GLB and Lexus LBX. Among the major two-wheeler launches of 2024 are Royal Enfield Shotgun 650, TVS Zeppelin, Bajaj Avenger 400, Bajaj Pulsar NS 400 bike, new Hero XF3R and new Hero Extreme. As the Indian economy gains momentum, more and more customers are planning to go for a new set of wheels. However, automobile companies are also taking an advantage of good demand, and experts say the average price of four-wheeler and two-wheelers can increase between 2 to 5% in the new year.
Okay, so that's about the auto launches lined up, but there has been urban consumption which has been doing well in terms of hospitality as well, whether it was the hotel prices this year or the kind of prices that we have paid for movie tickets. That tells you that there's a lot of pent-up demand. Ashi, what's your take on consumption right now, urban consumption and the entire premiumization wave, and which stocks do you think are best placed to play that theme?
Perspective, right? This is clearly one of the most attractive themes in India. I know valuations are a bit stretched, but what you've always seen globally is the moment you cross something called a $2,000 per capita mark, you see something called an S-curve that plays out, a sharp rise in discretionary consumption. And you clearly are seeing that in terms of underlying trends taking place in the Indian economy, especially urban consumption over the past few years. I think from the longer term perspective, we are very positive on discretionary consumption. Just over the slightly shorter term, you are seeing, I think, some amount of a base effect having caught up. You are seeing weakness in certain parts of urban consumption. Rural consumers have been weak for some time. That's coming back. But on the urban consumer part, you are seeing certain pockets of kind of weakness. I think you can explain this by some amount of weakness in the startup ecosystem in terms of startup funding. The IT sector is a bit weak. These are strong drivers of income creation, and which is where you're seeing some pockets of weakness in terms of urban discretionary consumption. Now, this is something that we aren't too concerned about over the longer term, but it just that you may get better pockets of opportunity to kind of buy into some of these names.
Since we're on the subject, let me also take it across to Avan. It seems like there's a battle of the biggies, if you want to call it that, at the box office this Friday. You've got Donkey and you've got the other one, Salar. I was thinking Prahar in my head. Yeah. But yeah, the movie is by Prabhas. So let's figure out from Avan as to what the bookings are like.
Well, film go. Get ready, because after 2 hits from Shah Rukh Khan, this is the third one that is expected to set the box office on fire. I'm talking about Dunki, which has arrived in cinema halls, and this is a Rajkumar Hirani directed film, and the numbers clearly seem to reflect, of course, SRK's immense popularity. Do remember that you had Pathan as well as Jawan, which were the other 2 films that released this year starring SRK that earned over 1,000 crores globally. This film has collected close to 10.3 crores. It sold close to 3.6 lakh tickets for day 1 across India, and on Tuesday alone collected close to 7.6 crore. This is just advanced booking numbers. So clearly it's after much fanfare, and it clearly seems that the morning shows as well of the film have seen at 26% occupancy. The afternoon shows as well have a pretty solid occupancy as well. People are arriving in cinema halls on the weekday, and over the Christmas weekend, of course, it's expected to do much better. And then there's also Salar Ceasefire Purse 1 that will be releasing, and that film too is going to be in a number of languages: Telugu, Hindi, Malayalam, Tamil, Kannada, etc. And that has grossed close to 6 crore rupees in terms of the across languages. They sold close to 2.4 lakh tickets for the 4,300 odd listed shows. The Telugu version clocked in close to 3.5 crores in terms of gross revenue. More than 1 lakh tickets sold there. The Malayalam version as well has done quite well with close to 65,000 odd tickets sold. And the Hindi version too, close to 1.1 crores is what they have managed to clock in. But do keep in mind that this film will not be released in national chains, including the likes of PVR and Mirage Cinemas in the south. But nonetheless, it is going to bring some festive cheer for moviegoers for sure.
Yep, what more could you want over the long weekend? Lots of options to do. But let me take it across to Sharad, find out what the dealing room chatter as well is like this Friday.
In focus is Axis Kits technology, and what we are hearing from the dealers is the strong HNI buying is seen across this cash counter, and the stock has hit its lifetime high levels as well. Now looking at the volumes also, it has picked up almost 6 times its 20-day average, and the dealers have stated that a strong QIP response is also being seen. Now the response is coming in from one large family office and a clutch of domestic investors, which includes PMS house as well as mutual fund houses. Apart from this, we also did a channel check, and overall fundamentally in their aerospace vertical, the demand or the inquiries have started increasing as well. So important development coming in Axis Kits technology.
Axis Kits technology, that's been the talk across the dealing rooms this Friday afternoon. But let's also get you some BTST trades that you could look for executing. Naresh, what's on your list?
So first is the one Maruti, which is reversing from the support zones of 10,000, could see some follow-up move going forward. Stop loss at 10,150, target price of 10,450. Second is a buy on Sun TV, a new 52-week high here, good momentum. Stop loss at 717, target price of 745.
Okay, that's the take coming in, Sun TV, and that surely is a big buzzer in today's trading session. I think on the last count as well, the stock was holding up 4.5%. In fact, we should bring up the intraday graph. Yeah, there you go, 4.5% right now on Sun TV. Nifty, of course, has covered most of its lost ground in any case. But Ashi, before we let you go, just wanted to understand in the last 2 months, if you've been a buyer or a seller anywhere in the markets, have you changed any of your portfolios anywhere?
Change that we've had is we've gone from a slightly more cautious to a clearly more bullish kind of outlook now. This is selective. This is more large and mid caps. You continue to see froth in small caps. But I think fundamentally from 2 months back, where there were a number of headwinds to the market, you're really starting to see low clear skies. So if you just kind of look at what has changed, 2 months back, you would be concerned about elections coming to next year. With various state government election results coming in, that risk seems to have reduced. The Fed was actually was fairly hawkish. They have turned clearly dovish, and you've seen a 10-year G-Sec yield in the US fall from 5% to 3.9%. That was a major overhang for the markets. That has gone away. FIs were pulling out, I think, over $2.5 billion for 3 months straight. Last month, they've turned positive. You've also had kind of oil prices starting to cool off. Geopolitical risk around Israel and Palestine have also not increased. So I think broadly from an environment where there were a number of kind of reasons where markets could potentially correct, or there were clear headwinds that we were seeing. The nice part, I think we're ending the year, and we're hopefully going to be starting the year with fairly clear skies. It's been for the last some amount of time, you've had a number of potential things that could go wrong, and markets have been moving up or climbing a wall of worry. I think now when you're looking at things for the coming year, hopefully like the new year kind of just continues the strong momentum we're seeing in the markets, and we start with a longer term bull market.
Okay, point taken. On that optimistic note, Ashi, we let you go. Appreciate you making time and speaking with us. But for the markets